comic book fans? Pete here from Comic Books Transformed with my good friend Brian over there. Brian, you ready to get back in the saddle and talk about The Last of Us?
Let's do it.
Nice. As you guys know, we like to talk about comic book adaptations, whether it's something that was made into a TV show or a movie, and it's based on some of your favorite comics. There is a Last of Us comic, and there is also comics featuring The Mandalorian, which we're also going to talk about later on today. So we got The Last of Us, Season 1, Episode 7, entitled Left Behind. And then we have The Mandalorian, Season 3, Episode 1, entitled The Apostate. And then later on, Brian and I are going to check each other's apostates, too. So there you go. Make sure your webcam's working. So anyway, let's go ahead and jump into The Last of Us. You said that this episode was based on a side game, right? Like downloadable content?
Yes, it was extra DLC content that came out after the release of the game. So it does take place at this exact moment. They kind of interpolate it at this point. So like the point where, Joel's hurt, falls off the horse, and Ellie has to help him. In the original game, you kind of fast forward to later. But here, you get to see the immediate effects of what happens. And it is just like the episode here. It's kind of like shown alongside Ellie's past with Riley.
Okay, so I feel kind of more ignorant. This is one thing you're definitely cooler than me about. I'm ignorant when it comes to video games. At the point of when The Last of Us came out as a game, was it at a point where they were making new content for the game, like as people were playing it, or is it just like you get the game and it's a complete story in itself?
That's a great question. This is a very highly debated topic in video games. So, for the most part, until very recently, video game prices have essentially stayed the same for like 20, 30 years. We've been paying $60 for video games since the 90s. Mm-hmm. But as you know, everything is a lot bigger, a lot more detailed, a lot more involved, and requires a lot more people to work on them. So, DLC was introduced as a concept to kind of extend the life of a game, get people to spend more money on it without having to commit like an insane amount of work for a sequel so quickly, and to kind of capitalize on a popular game. So a lot of people feel that when a game has DLC and when it comes out so soon after the release of the main game, that it's content that they cut out and are selling it to kind of inflate the price of the base game.
Sure.
And there are, it depends on the game, but there are arguments for, either way. Like most studios will tell you like, oh no, this was not part of the game. We didn't cut it out. It's definitely something we worked on after.
Yeah.
And, but it's hard to really tell, honestly.
Okay, so like I know that one game that you really like is Destiny, and that's like a good example of that, right? Because they're always coming out with like expansions.
Yes, and what's funny too is that their expansion that came out 2 days ago, and I actually, the first time ever, did not get it.
Why not?
That's a game that's a live service game, meaning that they constantly have new content, and in theory you could play it for years, which I have done. Yeah. And I've taken breaks before, but this time it's just I don't know. I'm playing other things. I'm enjoying playing games that start and end.
Oh, okay.
Lately. So and I have a very, very large backlog, as always, of games I want to play.
Yes.
Not enough time to do it.
And Brian and I are both fans of Marvel Snap. I'd say that maybe both of us are kind of addicted. I know that now you can play against your friends in Marvel Snap. I've played against Brian. He kicked my ass pretty badly. If you guys want to play against Brian or me, we'll accept your challenges. You can, find us on here, leave a comment. But anyway, let's talk about the episode itself, right? So this was an episode that was written exclusively by Neil Druckmann. He is the creator of The Last of Us game. He has written a couple other episodes of the show, but he is writing them with Craig Mazin, right? Yes. So this is the only one that was written just by him. it focused on the relationship between Storm Reed, that's the actress, right, and her character Riley Abel, and then Bella Ramsey's Ellie. So you have these two young actresses that are just basically carrying the weight for the entire episode.
Yes.
And before we get into the details about that, I was going to ask you: do you think that Storm Reed is named after Storm from the X-Men?
I hope so.
Nice, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Agreed. So I wrote this in my notes. I think you might have seen this, but I think both girls are good actresses, right? The thing is, this episode had essentially two scenes, in my opinion. There's two scenes. There's scenes where they're kind of running through plot points where they're explaining, okay, well, Riley had to join the Fireflies because of this. And, they're talking about what's going to happen because she's a member of the Fireflies and the difference between Fedra and the Fireflies. Then you have these sequences where she's showing Ellie around this mall, and there's multiple sequences where Ellie is just sort of responding in wonder to what she's seeing in this mall. And I feel like those scenes are really strong and great and are kind of in line with the stuff that we've seen in the show that are like the high points of the show. And then the other scenes where they're talking about Fedra and all this kind of crap, it's like it shows kind of the weakness in their acting, I think. And I think that, like, if this was two adults, it would still feel clunky and awkward then too. How do you feel about all this?
So you're referring to like when they're talking about the other trainees that they've interacted with, and then just the actual debate of Fireflies versus Fedra.
Yeah, like when Bella Ramsey's talking about that kind of stuff, when she's like, "Oh, you're a badass Firefly now," or like, "But Fireflies are messed up; they kill people." That stuff doesn't feel real, and I understand it's a post-apocalyptic show, right? So it's not reality, but the stuff where they're just like friends and there's not a lot of dialogue and they're going around this mall, that feels real and genuine. And I think that, like, the strength of this show is when you kind of forget about the post-apocalyptic stuff and you just are really caring about the characters.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I will definitely say that even in the game, I always felt that the Firefly aspect was like a little bit too much.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't feel believable, and it was just it seemed unrealistic to me, I guess. Like the way they're organized, even the name itself, something about it seems like a little cheesy, I guess.
Yeah.
I actually didn't have any issue with how they discussed it in the episode. Believe it or not, they in the show, Ellie doesn't find out that she joined the Fireflies until towards the end. But in the game, that's one of the first things they discussed, and it's kind of a point they keep coming back to across the DLC. So I prefer how the show did it. I think it is a good contrast, and I think it's an excellent question. Where Ellie asks Riley if what are you going to do? Practice killing Fedra or whatever. Because they were essentially saying that they were trainees for Fedra, and then she's defected to this other side there, and they kind of they're young, they're impressionable, they don't really know what to do with their lives in the apocalypse. So I think it was better done in the show than the game, and I didn't mind it. Maybe that's why I didn't mind it as much as you.
Okay. Well, it's interesting. We're up to episode 7, and we've reviewed every single episode together. I don't know if I've ever heard a part where you said, I like the game version better than the show.
Oh, no. Yeah, I absolutely, I'll make no secrets about here. The show, I think, is better. It's because, and again, like I've said countless times before, the game element takes you out of the story in a sense, because it still has to be a game, and there still has to be a challenge and enemies, and there's too much of that, and it weighs down the story because of it. This story was made for TV.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just really liked those sequences where they were like, Riley talks about the 4 wonders of the mall. He says 5 because, Ellie gets excited about the escalator. But every single time they would show one of those wonders, it was just so great. And I think that's because this idea that you get in sci-fi, where you'll have people that are in a post-apocalyptic future, or people that are in like a far-flung kind of Star Trek future, and they'll look back at our present day, and they'll see stuff that's like commonplace for us, and they're like, "Whoa, these people were weird." And I love that whole idea of us being the weird ancient people or the old time people and our weird cultures. And I think that like that's best exemplified in that scene where they're looking at the Victoria's Secret window and they're looking at the lingerie and they're like, why would you wear that? You know? So
yeah, and just to talk about the sets here.
Yeah,
I understand that most of the set here was CG. In fact, I didn't notice it at all. Like it looked like they were filming in. I mean, they did film in a mall, but it apparently wasn't up to snuff. And they had to do a lot of expensive VFX shots to enhance it. But I thought it looked fantastic, to be perfectly honest.
yeah, I think it looked really cool. I could kind of tell that it was fake when there was a sequence where the lights all came on and Ellie was standing there looking out at the lights. That kind of felt like kind of a video game. But then when they're walking in the individual stores, if they like took regular stores and just sort of made them look post-apocalyptic, then that did look really great.
Yes.
And I had no problem with that too. Yeah. So there's this one sequence where they're dancing, and this is actually another one of my really favorite parts. They're dancing at the end, and they have these Halloween masks on. They're dancing to "I Got You, Babe," and I was wondering if the Sonny and Cher version was the cover, and that's the original version, or if this is a cover.
Oh, that's a good question. I actually don't know.
Yeah. Did you see the movie Last Night in Soho by any chance?
I have not. I did want to.
Yeah. Well, one thing that's messed up about that movie, or it messed me up, is that they play the original version of a couple of songs that I always thought were original. Like, you know that song, I Got My Mind Set On.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. George Harrison.
So that's a cover.
Wait, George Harrison's is a cover?
George Harrison's is a cover.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Okay, and then you're
I
right.
think a Beatle could come up with his own music.
I know he comes up with sometimes they take stuff like the Beatles would kind of mine like Motown stuff, and so the original is like a Motown kind of song.
Yeah.
Then the other one, you ready for this? You know that song? There's always something there to remind me, right?
Yep.
Right, that's a cover too.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's why I was wondering about this song. And I feel sorry for the people listening to our podcast. They have to hear my tone deaf singing over here.
Yeah, it sounds like it might have been an original from Sonny and Cher.
Oh, Sonny and Cher was the original.
I think so.
Okay, good. We have to honor their legacy, you know. But yes, but I really like that sequence. It's a good choice. Like, are they wearing masks in the game by any chance?
Yeah, exact same mask too. That was fantastic. That was a nice little touch there. The sequence in the game, you're actually running through that horror store and you can pick up different masks, but that's the two they start with.
Do they play Mortal Kombat in the game?
So this is really interesting. They don't. So the timelines in the game and the show are different. The outbreak in the game is 2013, and it takes place in the 2030s. In the show, it's 2003 and then 2023. So although Mortal Kombat 2 would have been late 90s.
Yeah.
So it makes more sense for it to have been in the show.
Right.
It is not in the game, but because Warner Brothers owns Mortal Kombat now, they actually added the Mortal Kombat poster into the game retroactively.
Mm-hmm.
I guess because of the show coming out. Mm-hmm. So originally in the DLC it was not there, but now it is.
That's cool. I like that.
But they don't actually play Mortal Kombat in the game. It's kind of like this weird dream sequence where Riley kind of has Ellie imagine what it would be like to play a fighting game, and you actually put in like fighting button commands, but you're just looking at her face, like imagining it.
That's fucking weird. Okay.
Because none of the games worked. Like the electricity wasn't that good in the game. So.
Huh. Okay. Well, that's interesting. Okay. I'm just trying to picture that. So, okay. Here's the next thing. The differences between the game and the show. At one point, there's a clicker. First of all, if they're a zombie, are they automatically called a clicker, or do they have to be at a certain?
That's the clicker. A clicker is a stage 3 mutation, I think. So they're just infected prior to that. So in this, that was a clicker because he has all the fungus popping out of his face, or maybe an early stage clicker. And in the show, there's obviously only one, but in the game they were just infected because it's. I guess it's not really that much earlier time-wise than the normal story, but they were just infected, and there were more of them. I did like the approach in the show where they can show that just one thing can kind of ruin your day in this kind of world,
Your life, yeah.
Yeah, like it was just, all it took was one.
Yeah,
to ruin both their lives essentially.
So what about the guy that's dead in the hallway with the alcohol next to him? Is he in the game too?
No, not really. So they do find alcohol somewhere, but it's not in an apartment thing like that. It's in like a tent in the mall. They don't really even drink it that much in the game, but so that's not exactly it. But in the game, they find it in where someone they knew from the QZ was kind of like staying.
Okay, so there's no guy that just falls through the floor, right? Okay, like I was watching that with Sherry, and she found that very like jarring. She's like, okay, this guy just fell through the floor, and they're not reacting to. Yeah. So I don't know, but so okay. There's a couple of things, right? Because there's essentially like bookends to this episode. There's the part with Joel and Ellie in the very beginning, and she's made it all the way to a house. He's laying on the ground. He's saying, "Go back, go see my brother," and it looks like he's going to die any minute, right? And then it cuts to the end, and it's sort of like interconnected, like it goes back and forth between the two, where you're seeing her get bit, and her friend is infected too at the very end. But it's kind of cutting back to her time with Joel, and she's trying to figure out what to do with him. You said to me that after he gets hurt, there's a time jump. So that's stuff where Joel is hurt, and then she essentially is like stitching him up. That's not in the game?
That is in the game. So the main difference here is that there's a bit more gameplay in the present in the DLC.
Yeah.
And where the show focuses a lot more, mainly on the past. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you're going through the mall. You're looking. Actually, you're in the mall in the present and in the past.
Oh,
that's kind of the connection. They're not in a house, and there are human enemies that you have to fight in the game in this area.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
So yeah, but you're essentially looking for like a first aid kit somewhere, and you find something in a crashed helicopter in the mall. And I gotta say, I was cringing when she grabbed the thread needle, like a dirty thread needle off the floor. It was like, oh god, that's gonna get infected.
Yeah. That was pretty brutal.
Yeah, but she does find a clean, unused med kit in this trash helicopter that she's able to patch him up, which is maybe unrealistic that she still found it, but I feel better about that using that for some reason.
Jesus. Okay. Well, in the show, okay, here's spoilers for me, I guess, or disclaimer. I actually didn't watch the Here's the Next Week's like coming attractions. I didn't watch that, and I didn't watch the behind the scenes just because I didn't have a lot of time this week. I actually watched it like getting ready for work and stuff.
I don't think there was a preview of next week. I think it was just behind the scenes. I don't remember what they. Oh no, I'm sorry. They do show what happens next week. And next week we're actually going to get the voice actor of Joel in the game in the as a character in the show.
That's cool, man. Awesome. Okay, well, I'm looking forward to that. But so does the way that this episode ends, right? Because here's the thing. You see that Riley is infected and Ellie's infected. We know based on the show that Ellie is not going to turn. And then I guess we assume that Riley is going to die. And they have this little speech. They talk about how like what they could do, right? Is that the way it ends in the game?
Yes.
Oh shit.
That's actually the way that part of it ends there. And then I don't remember if the if her going back to Joel and sewing up Joel is before or after that. I think it's before, actually. I think the last thing you see is the two of them, the same camera shot. It's just the close up of their faces and they're talking, and then it just
Wow.
kind of gives you the title card and the credits.
Wow. Okay. That is interesting. Okay, so then like maybe don't spoil stuff, but to me that's very interesting because I was thinking, okay, well maybe they'll show more stuff next episode, right? But I'm assuming that this is just sort of one and done. They do the flashback, then there's another episode. We're back in the present. It's interesting that they don't show like her friend turning and her have to kill her friend or like her friend killing herself. That they ended right there because that's one thing I've seen with this show is they make it a definite choice to not show gratuitous violence. They often don't show people getting shot in the head, and I think that's really interesting. I think that's almost like the anti-Walking Dead because they're like choosing not to show stuff.
Yeah, totally agree there. I mean, you kind of have to set yourself apart of that. Love it or hate it. That show was, the thing for a number of years.
Yeah. So, I guess is there anything else that you want to talk about with this episode?
I was just curious if you felt that if this episode felt like it was stalling or anything like that. Did you feel this was out of place compared to the other stories, or do you feel it did kind of fit because of the we had the episode of the flashback with Bill and Frank and all that. I've seen a lot of people complain actually that that haven't played the game about this kind of being like a too much of a break, I suppose. Like this, they're at this tense moment and they don't follow up on it enough, and they jump to this flashback. But I appreciated it's Ellie deciding on if she's going to go on her own or fight to save someone that she cares about. And her remembering Riley is kind of a parallel to that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Two things out of what you just said, right? You said that people that didn't play the game but just watched the show were complaining about it, and that reminds me just of in general people that watch comic book shows or movies and they complain about certain things, and it's like, well, if you read comics, you know that this is pretty common, or you know that this is the way that this is supposed to go. And I think that what the fuck was I going to say? Like one thing that is common in comic books is that you'll have a crazy issue that'll go up to this like cliffhanger moment, and then you'll start the next issue and it'll be something completely unrelated. Bendis would especially do this, but like everyone does it, like Grant Morrison, where like you'll just start a whole new story almost, and then it'll bring you back to the present day, maybe at the end of that issue or in the following issue, but you literally have a whole issue and a whole month of waiting to get back to that cliffhanger moment. So it's like something I'm kind of used to. It doesn't bother me. It's not stalling. I think that when you tell things in like a linear way, like if we just saw this episode, but it was like the first fucking episode of this show, or like it was like the second episode, it wouldn't be as interesting to me as it sticking it in where it is. How do you feel about it?
Well, exactly what I said is that I think that the placement of this and the parallels between these are the two strongest relationships that Ellie's ever had in her life. Like that's what carries it here.
Yeah,
you're absolutely right. If they would have showed this first, it wouldn't have had as much of an impact.
Right.
And I also did see that a lot of people were review bombing it because it's yet again a queer romance.
Oh my God! Jesus
now,
Christ.
I guess second time in the show, they're probably writing the show off now because it's too woke.
I mean, can people just fucking grow up? Okay, so one thing I want to just kind of add to what you just said is that like when you see a character and they act a certain way, and you can tell that something happened to them in the past, but you don't see it right away, then it makes it so much more interesting when you see it later on, because you're like, oh, that's the reason why they act like that. Like I'm watching Lost with Pepper right now, and Lost is. Did you watch Lost or no?
Yes.
Okay, so like obviously you know the dynamic. If people don't know the dynamic, it's like there's flashbacks and then there's the main story, and like whatever's happening to the main character in the present day is connected to something that happened in a flashback. And this show kind of Lost obviously had a huge impact on storytelling and TV, right? because you can even feel it here. Like this kind of felt like Lost if you just like cut up this episode and like stuck it into other episodes of Last of Us.
Yeah. Oh man, I can go on for Lost for a long time. That was like the first like event television thing that I ever felt I really got into, and and I was disappointed by the end for the most part.
Same here. I think it kind of recovered a little bit by the last season, but it just kind of goes off the wheels. Danny's not a fan. Danny just watched like the first season and he hated the second season. I feel like it's really strong up until at least the third season.
When I first met Danny, the first two things I remember about him is that he hated Lost and he hated Crash.
Yeah, I've heard those stories too.
Those are my earliest memories of who Danny was.
Yeah, and I know those stories too, just from interacting with him. He's mentioned the Crash thing quite a few times too. If you guys like hearing me and you want to hear me with Danny, you can go over to our other channel, the Lastercast too, where we just reviewed a really fucking weird movie called The Outwaters, which had some weird imagery and stuff too. Some of you horror fans might like The Last of Us and that. But unless you have anything else about The Last of Us, we can move on to Mandalorian.
We got 2 episodes left. I guess I know where it's going, but based on how faithful they've been so far. But I'm excited to ride it out.
Nice, man. We timed this pretty well. We kind of get to like the half-hour mark doing one show, and then we go into the other half. It's good, man. So The Mandalorian, Season 3, Episode 1, The Apostate. Watching the show after Andor, you feel what?
So this is how I describe this. I thought a lot about this after watching Andor, which is obviously a very different thing.
Right.
I think that Andor was the best of Star Wars that you don't expect from Star Wars. But The Mandalorian is the best of Star Wars of things you do expect of Star Wars. You have like these cool, larger than life characters. You have weird aliens running around everywhere, and just a sense of kind of a Wild West space adventure sort of thing. I enjoyed coming back to that. I still think that this is the best overall example of Star Wars done right in a way that you expect Star Wars to be. In the tradition of the original trilogy and all the movies really. Yeah. And Andor was just something special and very different and off-brand, and not something that I'm gonna expect them to keep doing over and over and over again after that. Although I would like to see more of things like that. I think that this is the meat and potatoes of Star Wars, and maybe it's a bit of a higher grade of it.
Okay. Yeah. So, like the original Star Wars trilogy is like Transformers the movie 1986. The Transformers the movie 1986. Andor is the More Than Meets the Eye comic by James Roberts, and then Mandalorian is what, Transformers animated or like?
Yeah.
Exactly. Good. That works.
Yeah, that's perfect analogy.
Nice. So, okay. I actually really enjoyed this too. First of all, like Pedro Pascal, it's just like this is his year, this is his time. Just him and Grogu being back. You're just happy to see them on the screen. You're just happy to hear his voice in that armor and to just see Grogu. It's like they've been such a big part of our pop culture for years now.
Yeah, I mean this show essentially launched Disney Plus.
Yeah. And so, like, we're super excited to have them back. When the show started, you had the people from the tribe. That one. What's that woman called? Is she like called the fucking armorer?
Armorer.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you have her, and you have the other Mandalorian people, and they are like, in the by some water in a deserty kind of area. And did you think that kid? Like, did you think this was like a flashback, and that was Din Djarin?
I did, but my brain was doing mental gymnastics. I'm like, there's no way that she's still around and he's that young and he's as old as he is now. Like, there's no way that works out.
Right.
I guess she could have been an alien. We've never seen her face, but I assume that, she's got to be from Mandalore. They all have to be human-like,
Yeah.
So I was figuring that it was a little odd because the last time we saw them, they were, on those like underground like rafters on whatever city that was, and it was just her and Paz Vizala.
Oh, yeah.
And from Boba Fett essentially.
Yes,
So
yes.
it's kind of crazy that we're jumping to them having holy people back again. And
Yeah.
to watch what is supposed to be kind of like a dated kind of side sect of Mandalorian culture,
Yeah, they're growing. Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, they made an active choice. And here's the thing, right? Jon Favreau wrote this episode. He wrote pretty much every single episode of this show with a couple of episodes writing with other people. Yeah, he wrote 5 out of 8 episodes on his own. And then 2 are by Dave Filoni and him. And then another one is with Noah Clore. I don't know who that is. But, I wonder if, he's growing, if the Mandalorian and Boba Fett's actions have actually made more people become Mandalorians. You know what I'm saying?
Maybe, or maybe they just kind of were spread out and they just kind of found each other and have kind of gathered together. But I still find it interesting how, the end of the episode, we see, Bo-Katan essentially alone. Yeah. But yet this kind of obscure, almost, she refers to as a cult. The Children of the Watch seems to be growing,
Yeah. Well, okay, let's just jump to Bo-Katan for a second, right? And Katie Sackhoff just sitting there on her throne. Do you feel like the way that season 2 was going, that her sitting like that, do you feel like that is what they always intended? I mean, I know Jon Favreau has written and steered this show for 3 seasons now, but do you think that that's to me? It feels like there's something wrong. Like they were going to do something with her, and they had the course correct. Do you feel?
Yeah, my gut feeling here with the show is that I think they've kind of dug themselves into a slight hole here.
Okay.
If you would have asked me, towards the end of season 2, what I thought was going to happen, I would have thought that, Grogu, that would have been the end of Grogu. Like we wouldn't have seen him again. Right. But he's essentially, a large part of the draw of the show. Right. A lot of people, so they kind of need him on the show. I think lore-wise, it makes more sense for him to have stayed with Luke or something.
Right.
And I think they also backed themselves into a corner when they had Din Djarin win the Darksaber from Moff Gideon, because it creates that kind of rift between him and Bo-Katan. I think we would have been better off if Grogu was off with Luke and maybe Din Djarin was off with Bo-Katan helping her reclaim Mandalore.
Yeah. Honestly, that's what I kind of expected too. To me, it feels so natural for season 2 to end like that, and then it's like, okay, now you're with the Jedi, and that's it, and that's the end of your story. And then they kind of retcon it all in the Book of Boba Fett, which is its own show. And you were even saying to me on Twitter, you're like, imagine being a person watching the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian, and you come in the 3rd season, you'd be like, what the fuck is going on, right?
What happened?
Yeah. And so I do feel like the way that season 2 was, the way it ended, it was like, okay, Grogu is now gone, and now there's this conflict between the 2 of them, and I guess that's how they're going to move forward, because the show is called The Mandalorian. How are they going to resolve it? And I think now the new conflict is that he took off his helmet, and he has to go find the waters of Mandalore to sort of redeem himself.
Yeah, that's the other thing that I have an issue too with. I think the show is better with him being able to remove the helmet.
Yeah.
And I think that's another corner they're backing themselves into with the adherence to the Children of the Watch. And essentially too, it's like he's got the Darksaber. He's supposed to be the leader of Mandalore. Why can't he say, no, screw you guys?
Yeah.
I'm in charge. I have this. Look at this.
Right.
So I think they I honestly wonder if Grogu was only intended to be in the show a short time, but was so like everyone his popularity exploded and they realized they had to keep him on for
Yeah.
the benefit of the show. But I think narratively they've backed themselves into some corners here, and I'm very curious to see what they're going to do with it overall.
Yeah, like what does Star Wars have going for it now in the general pop culture lexicon? Besides, right, that's it. Because like we love Andor when we talk about Andor, but like Andor's like I think it's like the least rated or least watched show out of all the shows, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean we love it, but still, like when people think of Star Wars right now, new Star Wars content, they think of Grogu, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's at the fucking like Thanksgiving Day parade and stuff, and there's toys everywhere.
Oh, I mean, they're now in Disney World and Disneyland. Like you could run into Mandalorian and Grogu in Batu.
Oh man, I'd love to. Well, all right, so they run into a couple of fucking crazy things when they go to Dave Navarro planet, right? So they go.
Yeah, I did not recognize this planet at all. I'm like, wait a minute, wasn't this more like a deserty, rocky planet? And it looks like it looks like there's a lot of foliage that has grown at least or something. It looks a lot, better off, like a lot better off than last time we were there.
Dude, every fucking planet in Star Wars is like a desert, rocky planet.
True.
Right? Cool. But yeah, I know what you're saying. So yeah, it looks a little different. It's like they're prospering, and that's because Carl Weathers is taking over. The guy knows how to get, free food.
He's got to get a stew going.
Right. I'm sorry, but I love Carl Weathers. I always think of Apollo Creed, and I think of him in Predator. But when I see him on this show, I'm always thinking of Arrested Development.
Yeah, those are the three things I think of. I think of Apollo Creed, Dylan, you son of a bitch, and got to get a stew going.
Right. And so, he's sitting here and he's saying like, Mando, I need you as a marshal and all this kind of shit. And I'm like, all right, whatever. The planet itself was fun because they had all these fucking creatures. You said Salacious Crumb. That's those creatures.
Yeah, that was the name of the character. I don't think that's the name of the little race, but there's some kind of like weird lizard monkeys or something.
Right. You got those in the trees. Then there's like Babu Frick people too. I liked all that. But I was getting like Book of Boba Fett flashbacks with like the fucking pirate guy on the planet, and he like shoots them. I was like, oh, because I know that there's that Western aesthetic, and it's supposed to be like it's like a Western show, and they're gonna have like little adventures. But to me, that's this show at its best for me personally is like when the Mandalorian was struggling with what to do about Grogu. That's the most interesting part of the show. What about you, man?
Yeah, when he didn't. Yes, I mean, yeah, I guess that's been the main point of the show is what do you do with him? And then after he gets taken away, how do you get him back?
Right.
But now it's like the goal of kind of bathing themselves in the waters of Mandalore, whatever it is. It seems a little like unimportant because I think most people would prefer that he took a Bo-Katan approach and just wore his armor, sort of,
Yeah.
And I think the show would benefit that. I'm sure Pedro Pascal would be happy about that too. Although maybe the fact that he doesn't take the helmet off is why he can film The Last of Us and do the show at the same time, sort of, because he didn't have to actually be there.
Right. Well, I just think it's weird. It's like he's got this fucking sword that, like you just said, it makes him like the badass. It's like, I'm the badass. I'm the head of the whole planet. But it's like, no, you got to take a bath.
Yeah.
Once you take this bath, then you're actually a real Mandalorian. I mean, okay, there's something interesting about that concept of like, you have this weird culture to begin with that has its own rules, but then even that in itself is broken into two. And I'm sure there's other weird sects too. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think I lost it. Damn it.
No, it's okay. It'd be kind of cool if they ran into actually another Mandalorian sect too. Like, I mean, do you think the way it is, it's just like there's the main Mandalorian people and like Bo-Katan is that type, and then there's this weird offshoot that's like the armorer and her people, or do you think that there's more to it?
I think there's probably other sects out there.
Yeah.
But because she almost meant Bo-Katan almost calls them like a very minor offshoot.
Okay.
Like she says it's not that many. That I imagine there's lots of different like a clan kind of structure.
Yeah. I don't know. I think there's something appealing. I know that we're gonna get Sabine Wren, who's like another Mandalorian who's in that show Rebels. I know she's going to show up, and they've shown sequences where there's like fucking Mandalorian people like dropping out of a ship and they're kind of like lowering down to the ground. I don't know what's going to happen, but one thing I guess I didn't pay close enough attention, but is the idea that like he doesn't know where the entrance is to get to these waters? Is that like what the problem?
Well, I think the idea is that Mandalore's in a sorry state, and he doesn't know how to get to there, or it may not be as easily accessible as it needs to be. He needs it to be.
Okay, because it's like it's a fucking planet. Like they know where the planet is, right?
I think they know where the planet is, but it's just where this location is on the planet and what happened to it. I guess it's like buried under something, or has been like somebody mentioned something about they were crystallized or photonized or something, and like those green crystals. So I imagine it's buried under something, or it's like hidden behind these crystals now, and it's not accessible.
Okay. I gotta stop playing Marvel Snap while I watch shows and stuff, man. Like, because then I know he says at one point, like, "Well, I need to go get the Taika Waititi droid to go tell me how to get there." And like, do you remember in season 1 the Taika Waititi droid being like, "I know where there's water on it." Like, do you remember him saying that?
I do not know.
Yeah. So I thought it was kind of a random thing. It made me want to go back and watch that episode where he's in it.
Yeah, and I'm kind of glad they're bringing the character back because I do really like it, but at the same time, it's like a little too much of a reset, I think. Yeah, I mean, I guess the show always has kind of like a plot armory kind of feel to it, where they set up these scenarios that it seems impossible to get out of, but it's he's the Mandalorian, he can, but he doesn't always seem that like super skilled. At the same time,
right?
Like, sometimes he's like super amazing, and sometimes he's just like stumbling around, and it's like, how is this fucker not dead?
Yeah. Well, okay, this episode actually has good examples of that. Like at one point, they go on, they meet these pirates on the street, and Carl Weathers is there. The pirates kind of talk some smack to Carl Weathers, and he just like shoots them all real quick, right? So he's like this amazing badass. Then you have him in his fucking Naboo starfighter flying through the asteroids, and he's just taking them out like crazy too.
Yeah.
But then there's a scene where the Babu Frick alien guys, the Anzellans or whatever, are working on the IG-11, and the Babu Frick creature is just basically speaking English to him. Just it's like a little different, right? Yeah. And it's like Din Djarin doesn't get what he's saying. He's like, no work.
Broke.
Right. He's like, what is he saying? And then Carl Weathers like, he's saying it's broken.
He's saying it's broken.
Yeah, right. It's like, I don't get it.
He's arresting me for a stew.
I don't get it. Like when Chewbacca talks and stuff, it makes sense when someone's like, "Oh, well, this is what he said," or like when Jabba talks. But the thing is, just saying like needs new pots.
It's like we understood it.
Yeah, it's speaking like broken English, and Din Djarin's just sitting there like, "What is it saying? What Like, I don't know, man."
But there's something like, even though we were finding like I guess we're finding all kinds of little plot holes that we don't like about the show, but there's still something charming about the show that I really I like, and I'm I cut it a lot of slack, I guess. I don't know.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I can't say that it's like this amazing, well put together show. Like it's not like Andor for me, or some of the other things that you and I rave about, like The Boys or Invincible or something like that. But it's still, for what it is, it's well done and it's enjoyable. And I mean, like, people sort of rag on it for using the volume and the special effects. The beginning sequence of this episode, you have this big alligator monster, and it reminded me of when they fought the crate dragon in the previous. And I thought that crate dragon sequence in season 2 was like really fucking good.
Yeah, I thought this opening was excellent too.
Right, exactly. I people like rag on this with the special effects, but I thought both those scenes were really good.
It's maybe they spend more money on this show than the other ones. I don't get the feeling of it all being as fake as much on this show. There have definitely been times on other planets where it's seemed like that, but maybe here there was a little bit more of a live set or location set or something. I don't know, or something built physically rather than just being completely CG.
Yeah.
I definitely didn't feel like I was taken out of it because of the volume in this episode, especially since we got so used to seeing a lot more practical effects with Andor.
Yeah. I mean, I think that base that the pirate captain had, that looked like that was actually like a practical effect they used. I mean, I could be wrong, but I thought it was cool. I thought it looked really good. The base in the asteroid field.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And I really like that sequence. I really like the music. I like the way that he just kind of would fly out and snipe each of those ships. I thought that might have been my favorite part of that episode.
That was pretty cool. And whatever that pirate guy's name was, Gord, something. I don't know. He looked like a Christmas tree version of Pizza the Hut.
Right. I bet you he's something in Star Wars canon too. Because one thing they're doing now is they're like shoving in references to everything like left and right, and it's like if you're like a real Star Wars fan, you'll like really appreciate it. Like one thing that's really cool about this show in particular is that you'll have stuff from like the prequels, then you'll have stuff from the original trilogy, then you'll have stuff from the sequels too. So like with the prequels, we have like the Naboo Starfighter. The original, we have like the IG-88, and then for the sequels, we have like the Babu Frick.
Yeah.
I mean that's just one of like
connecting all three trilogies. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What did you think of when the IG-88 or IG-11 thing started to attack them?
Oh man, that was creepy. That was like that was a little more terrifying than I expected them to go. To be perfectly honest.
Yeah, it was like Terminator, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was very Terminator. Yeah,
the first one. Yeah. So I think we kind of actually answered all my questions and brought up everything. Oh, okay. I had a random question because of Babu Frick. I don't think we had a channel when Rise of Skywalker came out, did we?
No, we didn't cover any of the Star Wars movies.
Yeah. So, do you like the Rise of Skywalker?
That was my least favorite of the post the sequels.
Okay.
I was one of those people that came out of Last Jedi and disliked it at first, but I eventually came around on it. And it's my favorite of the three, even though it is vastly different than the other two.
Yes.
And I would change a thing or two in it maybe, but that's my favorite one. And I still think I still really like Force Awakens. I think it was like a huge nostalgia trip that worked really well in regards to that. But I think Rise of Skywalker really fell off the rails.
Oh yeah. Okay, we're on the same page, and that's fine. I like Last Jedi too. I think it's like a beautiful looking Star Wars movie. It's like one of the best looking Star Wars movies. I think like Rogue One and Last Jedi are like maybe the two best looking Star Wars movies ever, right? And yeah, I have some issues with The Last Jedi where I feel like there's some plot issues or logic issues, but I do like The Last Jedi a lot as well. Rise of Skywalker, I really had a problem with. Actually, I don't think I've watched it all the way through a second time ever. And that's, for a Star Wars movie, that's saying a lot.
I don't know if I have either, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, we're from that generation, man. I've watched like the original trilogy like countless fucking times,
Oh yeah, I've seen it in the theaters multiple times. So like every time they roll it back out, like time to go see Star Wars again.
Right. And we, in our time as friends together, we've had some like real fucking hardcore Star Wars fans as friends too.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, did you have anything else you want to say about Mando?
I guess not. I'm very curious to see where the whole overall story arc goes for the season. How many episodes are we here? Is it 8? 10?
Mm-hmm. 8. Yeah, it's been 8 each season. Yeah. Okay. So here's my last question for you then. Which Pedro Pascal show did you enjoy more this week?
Oh man, they're different. They're different. They're good for different reasons. It's hard.
Yeah.
I'm a sucker for sci-fi. I mean, The Last of Us is probably a better show, but I'm a sucker for sci-fi and weird alien stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I think had I had the choice, I would pick something that's a little more fun and adventurous than something that's super serious and dire like The Last of Us.
Okay, that makes sense. I can see that. I would have to say that I would go with The Last of Us. And Pedro Pascal's barely in that episode too, but just the sequences of I want to show you the wonders of the mall, and then each time there was a wonder. I think that was better than anything that was in The Mandalorian this week.
Yeah. From a technical, emotional story beat perspective, like absolutely, I can't deny it. But I have a preference for fun sci-fi, fun adventure stuff.
Totally
So
understand. Yeah. Cool, man. All right. Well, I think we're going to do that every week while we still can. Which Pedro Pascal show did you like better?
Okay.
And then, The Last of Us, we have 2 episodes left, right?
Yes.
Yes. And I think we have another movie and stuff coming out this month, too.
Shazam?
Shazam, yes.
Shazam's coming out. You know what? There might be something else, too.
Yeah. I think there's John Wick, but you and I don't really talk about John Wick.
You know what? How do you feel about John Wick?
I actually love John Wick. I love John Wick, the first one and the second one. The third one's good, but I don't know. It's sort of like excessive with all the violence and the action. It's like, okay, all right, we get it now. They're gonna shoot each other. But I love Keanu Reeves, and I always enjoy these movies.
I feel the exact same way, but nothing I've seen for this fourth movie has me interested in any way.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing new or exciting about it whatsoever to me. I don't even care about the resolution anymore. I don't know what happened. I didn't hate the third one. It definitely wasn't as good as the first two.
Right.
But like, maybe it should have ended at 3 and not so drawn out.
Yeah, and this next one is like 2 hours and 40 minutes long or something.
Jesus, is it even the last one?
Probably not. No, but yeah, 2 hours and 40 minutes long for a John Wick movie. That's yeah, man.
Crazy.
Yeah. All right. Well, it has been fun as always. If you guys have not subscribed to Comic Books Transformed, please do. Make sure you give us a like too. And Brian and I will be back next week for more Mando.